Recently I was asked about the base I'd used on a competition entry, so it seems like the perfect time to go through the process of what it is, how I used it, and where the idea came from. So these are what's known as an artist panel or a wooden painting panel, and here you can see where I sourced these from on Amazon. So after designing the text in Adobe Illustrator, I then imported what is known as an SVG file into the Cricut software. And I'm going to use my Cricut Explore Air 2 to cut out a vinyl mask. This idea came from Michael Rinaldi, who did exactly the same thing, and I have most definitely copied his idea. The only modification here is the text that I'm using for the particular model that this sits on. So once we've cut out the design on the vinyl cutter, we then need to be able to transfer that design over onto the final substrate. In that case, that would be the artist panel. So to do that, we use a product known as transfer tape. So it's a low tack, transparent vinyl, which we can apply over the top of the stencil or mask and remove the surrounding material and then transfer the design over to that final substrate. So here you can see that I'm cutting out a section of transfer tape large enough to be used. The good thing is the grid lines also help me work out where I need to cut. Key thing here is that once the transfer tape's been pushed down onto the cut vinyl, we need to burnish the top of that so that the letters that we want to keep, which will be the positive mask, will then stick to that transfer tape. Once the transfer tape is applied to the vinyl mask, I can then stick it all onto a working mat. So these Cricut mats are covered in a low tack surface so that the vinyl stays in place whilst I work on it. The next step is to remove the white backing sheet by bending it back against itself to reduce the chances that the vinyl letters are going to lift off the transfer tape. I then carefully slice the vinyl into sections of single line text. This makes it much easier to remove the vinyl surrounding the letters and leave me with a positive mask. This process of weeding the excess vinyl is both tedious and highly rewarding. I need to take care here not to lift the letters if I can, as the key to successfully aligning all the text is not to lift any of it. So be slow and methodical in your approach, because any errors avoided here will save you a lot of time down the track. You'll see that the periods often are difficult to separate, so I need to be careful here and remove them individually and then reinsert them as needed. It's then just a matter of removing the infill pieces as required. These forms of masks have a lot of potential for us in the hobby. As I've mentioned, this is a design I've used for a competition base, but it could just be as easily used to make a display base at home. I've always stuck to a simple white or black theme for my bases as it's totally neutral and allows the model to shine. But you could use bold colours for subjects such as real space, mecha, etc. The choice would be yours. As far as vinyl cutting machines go, I'm using a Cricut Explore Air 2, but there are several similar machines on the market. These really are aimed at the hobby market, so their entry price point is quite reasonable, to be honest. I'm getting close to the limit of how small this will cut a lowercase letter, but it's performing well. These machines are changing our hobby, and this base is a great example of how we can integrate this tech into our own processes. I've also seen these vinyl cutters used to cut masks for spraying markings as an alternate to using waterslide decals, or for masks for aircraft canopies, and that's an absolute game changer in our hobby. Now I did prep this artist board with the white acrylic, which will be masked by the vinyl letters. I spray an even coat with an airbrush, and that's all that's needed here, no prime at all. One of the features of using these acrylics is that it raises the wood grain, which is actually a feature that I want to have. This adds interest to the base, but not in such a way that it draws attention away from the model, which really is the hero in this display piece. After measuring and marking the key reference points on the base, I'll peel back the transfer tape from the Cricut mat. Sometimes an individual letter will move, and that just requires a little bit of adjustment. I can then align the transfer tape on the base using the reference marks that I've made. And stick it down firmly. Again, I burnish the letters to make them stick to the base properly. Carefully peel back the transfer tape, and I can adjust the alignment of any letters that are out of place. And this usually does happen. I usually get one or two of those letters that'll just move as I'm adjusting the transfer tape. Once I'm happy with the letter alignment, I can move on to the spraying of the top coat. In this case, I'm using Tamiya XF1 Flat Black. The key here is to spray light misting coats that will dry quickly over the letters. This makes a kind of protective seal that prevents paint from leaching under the letters. Don't try to spray a heavy coat, you don't need to reach opacity quickly. The best thing here is to take your time to prevent that leaching under the letters, and you'll get crisp, sharp results. Then it's just a matter of slowly applying paint over the rest of the wooden panel. Pretty straightforward task. As far as paint choices go, there really is little difference between using acrylics or lacquers here. In fact, lacquers may give you a slight advantage in that their inherent volatility will see them cure faster. I've used Cricut non-permanent vinyl for this process because, look, you don't want to have it stick forever, and permanent vinyl is just going to rip off the base paint and probably fight you the whole way. There are plenty of aftermarket non-permanent vinyl options too, so feel free to shop around. Now take care when lifting the vinyl letters. I use a craft knife and tweezers as I don't want to scratch the white base coat. Take your time, as this is the most rewarding stage of the process. The final step is to spray a clear coat over the surface of the panel to protect all of your work. On a competition piece, judges are going to pick up the base and handle it, so it's a good idea to protect it. You will use a surprising amount of paint to complete each base, but really it's worth it in the end. Time-wise, I found this took me about 90 minutes to complete. It's a relatively effective option compared to getting a printed base, and it's totally customisable. And there we have a simple yet effective base that complements our model. Thanks again to Michael Rinaldi for this concept, and good luck to all of you if you also decide to make your own version of this excellent display base.